Picture this. You buy a fresh loaf of bread on Monday, and by Thursday, it's already turning stiff, dry, and maybe even growing a little fuzz in the corner of the bag. So you do what most people do. You toss it in the trash. Sound familiar? If it does, you're not alone. Bread is actually the single most wasted food in America. A staggering 38% of all grain products produced in this country are lost every year, and a big chunk of that is happening right in your own kitchen. Once you understand what your freezer actually does for bread, you'll never let another loaf go to waste again. So let's get into it. Number 1. Your freezer extends bread's life by months, not days. Left on your kitchen counter, a standard loaf of bread stays fresh for about 3 to 5 days, maybe a week if you are lucky, and your kitchen is not too warm or humid. After that, it starts going downhill fast. But pop that same loaf in the freezer, and it can stay good for up to 3 months, and in many cases even longer. The United States Department of Agriculture confirms that food kept at or below 0 degrees Fahrenheit is technically safe to eat indefinitely. Now, quality does start to slowly fade past that 3-month mark, but the point is, you are taking something that would spoil in less than a week and turning it into a months-long supply. That is not a small difference. That is a complete game changer for how you manage food in your home. Number 2. Stop putting bread in the fridge. This one surprises a lot of people. Many folks think the fridge is the next logical step when they want bread to last longer, kind of like with leftovers. But with bread, the fridge is actually one of the worst places you can put it. Here is why. Bread goes stale through a process called starch retrogradation. When bread is baked, the starch molecules absorb water and create that soft, springy texture we love. Over time, those molecules start to recrystallize and harden, and that process happens fastest at cool temperatures just above freezing, which is exactly what your refrigerator is. Food science research has shown that bread can stale up to 6 times faster in the fridge than it does sitting out on your counter at room temperature. 6 times. So if you have ever pulled a loaf out of the fridge and found it hard and flavorless the very next day, that is exactly why. The solution is to either keep it on the counter for short-term use or go straight to the freezer for anything beyond a couple of days. Number 3. Slice it before you freeze it. This is the move that makes freezing bread actually practical for everyday life. Before you freeze a loaf, go ahead and slice the whole thing first. That way you can pull out exactly what you need, 1 slice, 2 slices, whatever, without having to thaw the entire loaf. Just stack the slices back into their original loaf shape, wrap them tightly in plastic wrap or aluminum foil, and place the whole thing into a freezer-safe zip-top bag with as much air squeezed out as possible. The enemy of frozen bread is AIR, which leads to freezer burn. Double wrapping is the move here. You can also group slices in pairs using small squares of parchment paper between them, making it even easier to separate exactly what you need without a butter knife prying them apart. Number 4. Buy in bulk and save money when bread goes on sale. Buy bread on sale, then freeze. Here is where freezing bread becomes a genuine money-saving strategy. The next time your grocery store has bread marked down, whether it is a buy one get one sale, a manager's special, or you found a great deal at a bakery outlet, do not hesitate. Buy extra and freeze it immediately. The freezer essentially presses a pause button on freshness so you can stock up without any of that bread going bad. Americans waste an average of over $900 worth of food per year per household. A big part of that comes down to buying food and not finishing it before it spoils. With bread, you can completely eliminate that waste by simply moving the excess straight to the freezer the same day you bring it home. Over the course of a year, that alone can save a family a meaningful amount of money. One of the best parts about freezing sliced bread is you don't even have to plan ahead. Frozen slices go directly from the freezer into your toaster. Just add an extra minute or so to your usual toasting time, and you'll have a perfectly toasted slice. For sandwiches or other uses where you want soft, thawed bread, lay a few slices on the counter for about 20 to 30 minutes, and they will come to room temperature on their own. You can also warm them in the microwave for about 15 to 20 seconds for a quicker option. No planning required, no wasted bread, and no stress about having to eat something before it goes bad. Number 6. Freezing locks in freshness at its best. One key thing most people do not realize: the best time to freeze bread is when it is still at its freshest, not when it is already getting stale. Many people treat the freezer like a last resort, and they only toss bread in there when it is already on the way out. But if you freeze a loaf while it is fresh, it comes out of the freezer tasting close to fresh as well. Freezing stops starch retrogradation almost entirely, meaning the bread is essentially preserved right at the moment you freeze it. So if you know you will not get through the whole loaf in a couple of days, freeze half of it immediately after buying. Do not wait. The fresher it goes in, the better it comes out. Number 7. Almost every type of bread freezes well. Sandwich bread, whole wheat, sourdough, dinner rolls, bagels, English muffins, homemade bread, banana bread, nearly all of them freeze beautifully. The one exception most bakers point out is very crusty, airy breads with a high surface-to-crumb ratio, like a classic thin baguette or ciabatta. These styles tend not to revive as well after freezing because so much of their appeal is that crispy, crackling crust, which softens when frozen and thawed. But for the everyday breads most American households are buying and eating, the freezer is an excellent option. Homemade bread in particular benefits enormously from freezing, since it contains no preservatives and typically starts going stale within just 2 or 3 days after baking. Number 8. The right way to thaw bread. For a whole loaf, the best approach is to move it from the freezer to the counter, still wrapped, and let it thaw for 2 to 3 hours at room temperature. The bread will actually reabsorb moisture that collected inside the bag while frozen, which helps restore its soft texture. Once it is thawed, you can pop it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 10 minutes to wake the crust back up and make it taste nearly freshly baked. You can also go straight from the freezer to a 400 degrees Fahrenheit oven for about 20 minutes if you want it ready fast. Just plan to eat it right away, since this method causes it to go stale again quickly. The oven is your best friend when it comes to reviving frozen bread. Number 9. Even freezer-burned bread has a second life. Sometimes bread gets pushed to the back of the freezer and isn't used quite in time. If you do end up with some freezer burn or slightly dried out frozen bread, don't throw it away. Freezer-burned bread is absolutely ideal for making homemade croutons, French toast, stuffing, bread pudding, or breadcrumbs. A little bit of freezer burn does nothing to a batch of croutons. Just cube it up, toss with olive oil and seasoning, and bake. You'll never know the difference. So even in the worst-case scenario, your bread has a second life instead of ending up in the garbage. Number 10. It reduces food waste and stress. There's something genuinely satisfying about opening the freezer and knowing you've always got bread ready to go. No more rushing to finish a loaf before it goes bad. No more guilt about throwing out a half-eaten sandwich loaf. No more last-minute trips to the store because you ran out. Freezing bread gives you flexibility, saves you money, and cuts down on one of the most common forms of household food waste. It's one of those habits that takes 60 seconds to build and pays off every single week. The next time you get home from the grocery store with a fresh loaf, take a minute to think about how much of it you'll realistically eat in the next few days. Then freeze the rest right then and there. It costs you nothing, takes almost no effort, and makes a real difference in how far your grocery budget stretches. This channel shares useful, common-sense tips that help you stop wasting things and stretch your money further. We post many more ideas like this, so if you find these videos helpful, subscribe and stay up to date. Your wallet will thank you.